generating station has been operating since 1931. It is the oldest fossil fuel burning plant in the province. It has the capacity to make up to 60 megawatts of electricity. Meanwhile, newer plants in the province can produce up to 4 to 5 times that amount. Although it is small, the station is an important source of employment for the nearby coal mining community of Minto. But UNB professor Dr. James Whitehead says it just doesn't make sense to keep the power plant open.
Yeah, I believe it should be shut down, and so does the provincial government. And they've suggested they're going to be shutting it down by 2010, but they're not providing any time frame by which they're going to do that. Given the small amount of power that's produced by that station, then some of the alternatives that are coming online in terms of wind power projects and even open turbines in the Bay of Fundy, it would seem it's the time to actually come up with a plan as to how to shut it down and when.
But the provincial utility doesn't seem to be in a hurry to close down operations at the plant. Heather McLean speaks for NB Power.
Grand Lake is a base load plant. It's an important part of our system that provides power to New Brunswickers. Without that plant, we would have to seriously look at, other generation and what we would be doing there. If we lost that plant right now, it would, we would need time to adjust. I mean, the plant remains very important to supplying your home heat.
But according to Mr. Whitehead, Grand Lake makes up only 3% of the thermal power generation in the province and 35% of the sulfur dioxide emissions. NB Power's own website clearly shows that Grand Lake makes up a big portion of their emissions. Despite its inefficiencies, Grand Lake will be part of the province's power generation, at least until 2010, when its operating license expires. For Stu Journalism, I'm Stephanie Van Kampen.
It was a fixture in the community of Minto for 75 years, but the huge smokestack that was part of the Grand Lake generating station is no more. The stack, part of the now decommissioned power plant, came down this morning in a controlled explosion. It was the most dramatic part of the ongoing demolition of the station. People waited for hours to see the big chimney come down, and as Global's Kara Rapke found out, watching the smokestack fall had residents thinking about the economic future of their community. There she goes!
It took mere seconds to be demolished and left nothing but rubble. The smokestack that was once the most recognizable part of the Grand Lake generating station took over 200 sticks of dynamite to bring down. After the dust settled, it was hard to imagine that the stack was even there. But for residents that waited for hours this morning to catch a glimpse of the demolition, it was hard to forget the vital role that the generating station played in the community.
They built houses here. Power Commission built houses for people to come work because this was a very small community when they built it.
It's very sad for the whole community as far as I'm concerned. For the amount of jobs it affected and the spin-off from the jobs.
The Grand Lake generating station was built in 1931. Today's explosion is part of a much longer demolition that will eventually tear down the entire generating station. Many people in the region earned a living at what used to be a major economic driver for the area.
I hauled coal in for 27 and a half years, and then we cleaned the stockpile out 2 years ago, and that's the end of the coal.
That's my father and father-in-law and my husband all worked in the coal mining industry, so yes, it is the end of an era for sure.
The plant shut down 2 years ago, but the reality of seeing the stack fall has many people worrying about the economic future of the region and wondering what will happen to the site. And looking at the wreckage right now, it may be hard to believe, but this area is slotted to be turned into green space that may include picnic areas and a park for the community.
We have a few buildings left to demolish, and those will be done over the course of the next 8 to 12 months approximately.
The details of the new green space will be finalized in the near future. Kara Rapke, Global News, Minto, New
Brunswick. Petro Canada. Then you come here with your Irving.
Minto Mayor Eric Barnett points to places on an aerial photograph where gas stations once stood in the village.
Here's a Irving. Across the road is a Shell. And around this turn around the stone bridge was an Ultramar.
One by one, those stations closed as the coal mining industry here shut down. Then, last Thursday, without warning, the last surviving station placed signs on its pumps. It was out of gas. Mayor Barnett says now the nearest gas stations are 15 to 20 minutes away.
Inconvenience having to travel outside your village limits to get gas. It makes it harder for our village equipment. We have Irving credit cards, so we have to get gas up in Chipman.
Kendall Coburn works next door to the gas station. He says no one saw the closure coming.
The only thing I can figure out is they ran out of gas, and they haven't seen a gas truck here since.
Carla Miller runs a massage therapy clinic in Minto. She hopes the station will reopen.
This is a community that's very much a bedroom town or a bedroom community to Fredericton. A lot of families, young families, live here and travel back and forth between Fredericton and Minto, so we do need the supply here.
Mayor Barnett doesn't know why the station closed or if it's permanent. We tried contacting the owner, but our calls were not returned. In the meantime, Barnett says he plans to see if someone else is interested in buying the station. It is up for sale. Susan King, CBC News, Minto.
I think it's an awful disaster for Minto. Awful.
Yeah.
You know, what are the people? There's so many seniors that live here and depend on this place. They can't drive, and I don't know what we're going to do here now.
It's a devastating loss to the community for sure.
How do you feel standing here this morning?
A little distraught, a little heartbroken. I mean, it's the only grocery store we had, right?
Assuming you shopped here?
Oh yeah, been shopped here. Used to work here as a little boy. I used to unload the food trucks out back, and they give you $5. They give you $5 for unloading the truck and a can of pop and a bag of chips.
Road, aren't we? We're on Route 690. Estimated guess on how much water's on this road? Between 5 and 6 feet.
This is a small community along Grand Lake, east of Fredericton. Brian Glenn wants Canadians to see what's happened here. At every turn, the devastation is heartbreaking.
That property was parallel with the road. Now it's perpendicular. So it's swung 90 degrees. I guess the only thing holding it there is those trees.
Some houses have even been ripped from their foundations and have floated away.
Right through there, and it traveled about 6 or 8 miles across the lake to Waterboro.
So much has been invested here. So many cherished memories made in homes that have stood here for generations.
A lot of these people, that's where they raised their family here, and their family raised their families after. So most of these properties have been occupied by the same families for 50 years.
This was Glenn's grandfather's home.
You obviously have memories as a child playing in the yard. You know, we put up what we could, you know, on top of tables and whatever. But as you can see, everything is floating.
They've seen flooding here before, but nothing like this.
They did a lot of work. They did a lot of work in making that place a nice spot. And look what they got now.
Homeowners kept building on higher ground, never expecting the water would reach them.
A lot of these properties are write-offs. It's not a case of going in there with some, after the water recedes, it's not a case of going in there with big fans and drying it out. There's huge structural damage. Most of them a lot of them are beyond repair. Oh yes, no, most of them.
Some will rebuild. For others, it may be too much to take on in this community forever changed by the flood of 2018. Vanessa Lee, CTV News, Grand Lake, New Brunswick.
Saw a building. I thought, what is that? Completely upright, curtains still in the windows.
That place was built by my father before I was born in the 70s. I guess he made it pretty sturdy. I'm really kind of shocked that it never capsized onto the bottom of the lake.
Firefighters in New Brunswick are still battling flames at a tire recycling facility in Minto, and that's about 45 minutes outside of Fredericton. Now, that fire began late Friday night, and heavy smoke and flames continue to rise from the shredded tires. New Brunswick's Emergency Measures Organization says the fire is under control and there are no evacuations in the area. Officials are laying sand on the site to prevent any spread. Well, for more on this, we're now reaching out to Jeffrey Downey by phone. He is with the New Brunswick Emergency Measures Organization, and he joins us now in Minto, New Brunswick. So, Jeffrey, thank you for joining the program once again. As we say, you're on location in Minto. In fact, I hear you're about 200 meters away from the fire. So can you tell us what's happening around you right now?
Right now, they've shifted a bit in the strategy. There are slightly fewer firefighters around, but there's lots of truckers bringing in sand. What they're trying to do is essentially bury the tires, robbing them of the oxygen, so snuffing out the fire.
Is that known to be an effective way of fighting this type of fire, do you know?
Yes. We've adopted the strategy based on advice from a number of other jurisdictions that have experience with this kind of thing. And so on top of, addressing the fire issue itself, the sand will also reduce the amount of water used in fighting the fire, thus minimizing future environmental impacts.
Mm-hmm. Now, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jeffrey, we're talking about an area that encompasses about 2 hectares of land. How much sand is actually going to be needed if that's now the tactic being used to combat the flames?
We're not sure. This isn't something we've tried before. So what we do know is this. We're not worried about a shortage of sand. We know we can bring in enough to address the situation.
Where is it being brought from?
It's being brought from local nearby quarries.
Okay, so local quarries being brought by truck. How are people holding up right now? Because we were talking about firefighters yesterday. We continue to talk about firefighters, but now, as you say, a number of truck drivers involved in this effort. So how are people holding up?
As well as might be expected. There's no good time of year for something like this to happen, but the Christmas season does compound it a little bit. But by and large, the firefighters are getting the rest they need. The mayor of Minto has been in touch, obviously, with the residents in the area, as has the MLA, Chris Austin. They haven't reported any great concerns on behalf of residents.
No great concerns, but any other general advice you are giving to local residents right now?
Well, we're still recommending people shelter in place. There's no evacuation orders. That could always change. But right now, sheltering in place is the best option. We're asking people to turn off air exchangers, keep their windows closed, and keep an eye out for the plume. Always stay aware which way the smoke's heading. We're expecting people to use common sense. We'd ask them to try and avoid the roads with all the trucks bringing the sand in, because they're going to be very busy. Again, now isn't, maybe the time to go for a run if there's, a huge smoke plume over your house.